Hello, cool people. My name is John, aka Yugimoto Jeans, and what the cool people are talking about is Ethel Cain, and not just Ethel Cain's music, but what her fan base has shown us and what their relationship is with the queer South. And first and foremost, this is no hate to Ethel Cain. I saw some observation in her fan base and this kind of cult following she's created, and what I have felt being someone that is also gay and from the South. So in 2022, a lot of people caught on to Ethel Cain, aka Hayden Anadonia, from her latest album, Preacher's Daughter. And if you don't know, Ethel Cain is from Northern Florida. She's from the South, and she's also trans. And she details this experience of Ethel Cain being grown up in the South in a very religious family on this Preacher's Daughter's album. So Ethel Cain is also the artist, but also the figure being presented in this album, and it's a very emotionally evoking album. It is a crazy storytelling album, very long, in-depth album. And what it does is it details the life of a trans woman being a preacher's daughter. Her dad is a preacher in a church, presumably like a Baptist church, and she just gets alienated by him. All this stuff of all these like shame and guilt is arisen in within this album, and it very details this girl's experience. She eventually runs away, and she eventually decides to go off with this guy. And then at the end, spoiler warning if you haven't listened to the album, but it's been out for almost 3 years, so I'm going to say it. She eventually gets cannibalized by this guy that she runs away with, and it's a very jarring album and just a scary feeling of what it's like to be trans, because being trans in the South is a totally different feeling than being gay. I can only empathize with those people on how the shame and the guilt that gets brought up when you live in the South. And a lot of people, especially queer people, resonated with this album because wherever you go, it's even in 2024, you've probably experienced some kind of homophobia. If you're online, if you live in the South, or if you live in a smaller town, you've experienced that. And it's a very unique experience as a queer person to have these feelings of shame and guilt about yourself. And like I said before, I can only relate as a gay man in the South. Being trans is a whole nother experience, worse than probably what I ever received. But what this album brought up was the difference between religious homophobia and regular homophobia. And with religious homophobia, being from a very religious family myself, you're intrinsically an evil person, because when you grow up in a religious family, you have this idea of sin, and sin is just doing a bad action, and you have to get forgiven of it, or you go to reconciliation. Because I was Catholic, you go to reconciliation to forgive it, be forgiven of it. But when you're queer, everyone's always telling you that you're living this life of sin. So you have to live with this cognitive dissonance, because when you grow up in a religious community, you have all these mentors and all these people that you look up to, but they're all telling you you're like intrinsically acting wrong, and there's nothing you can do about it because this is intrinsically you. You can't stop being gay, or stop being trans. So it's like you have to separate yourself, and it's just really hard. And personally, I've had rifts with my family members. Before my dad passed away, we got into a huge argument, and I was probably a little bit brash about it, but we got in a huge argument. I pretty much told him, are you going to pick religion over me, or are you going to pick me as your son? And he couldn't answer it. The words out of his mouth were, if I have to pick you over religion, I just don't want to have this conversation anymore. He couldn't do it. And it was a hard thing to overcome. I was like, wow. And that's what religion does to you. It makes you choose religion over your own family. And that was before that. And then a couple months later, he had passed away. So kind of hard. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words, but kind of hard to talk about. But that's what it does. You can't make people change their minds about it, because religious homophobia is so indoctrinated in people. And that's why I resonate with this album so much, because no matter how much because in this album, she wanted to be the good preacher's daughter. She wanted to be that person, but she just was never going to be accepted because she was trans. So it's very hard to grow up in the South as a queer person. So let's get into Ethel Cain core. So someone that talks about fashion a little bit, I see all the trends, I see all the cores, and this one came up in like 2023, late 2022. And what Ethel Cain core is just you are enamored with Southern imagery, Gothic imagery, camo pants, thrifting all your stuff, a lot of skulls, a lot of wood, a lot of just dark colors. And it was one of the more trendy aesthetics to pick up within the fashion culture. And honestly, shout out to Ethel Cain, because if you made an album that big that you are creating fashion trends, you're doing something right. And this was adapted by a lot of people, especially people in bigger cities like LA, New York, these bigger fashion cities. And now we get into the part of why Ethel Cain's fan base has kind of ruined the queer Southern experience. So I came across a Twitter post, and this guy is from the South, had taken these photos of like a cow and like cross and all this stuff. And he was just taking these, I guess he was there for the holidays. And this one person quotes the thing as like, show these pictures to my boyfriend's family that's in the South, and there's nothing special about these. Something along that lines. That's not a direct quote. And they were kind of eating up in the comments. And this is someone I feel like that is a lot of people in it, because they're like the person was from New York City, and these people want to identify with it, and they hold it so close because they probably feel these feelings about being alienated and stuff like that. But when it comes to being queer in the South, it's a whole nother ball game, because like in Cain's video or album, like you die, there's a chance of dying, and there's a higher chance of unaliving yourself and all this stuff. Like you on like survival. You don't know, like a lot of people that I grew up with in the South, and this is just from like Kentucky. We're not even like in deep South, but a lot of people that I grew up with, we all share the same sentiment. We're like, I have to find somewhere to live because I'm going to get kicked out. My parents are going to come after me. I have a high probability of like getting just steamrolled out of my family. So there's a little bit of like, there's constant fear. That's why people in the South don't come out as longer. There's people in, around their 30s and 40s here when, more common. And I think there are some queer people that want to feel this way because they felt it in like modicum of moments and stuff like that, but they want to have something to fight against because they haven't felt it, because you live in a New York City or you live in LA or somewhere more liberal. But like for me, I guess is for dealing with this kind of like feel it and I want to be in it. It's just like, one, it's not a great feeling. Like you never want to feel like that. You never want to feel like your parents are going to kick you out. Your parents are going to kill you. Your parents are like, you have so much shame and guilt that you want to like yourself, like you to do that. And like, look at Cain's story. You run away with someone that's going to like pimp you out, and eventually like, that's not a great feeling at all. But also too, just advocating for the like Southern queer people. You can go out and listen to these people's stories. You can go actually visit the South, visit places like Atlanta, Tallahassee, Birmingham, Jackson, Mississippi, and see the crazy shit that's out there and realize, whoa, these people are living in dangerous situations. That's why so many people want to come to a New York City or go up north, because it's just a safer option. And what I feel like I want to feel this like struggle. I want to be this person that has all this like, struggle. Like, it creates an almost enemy, like Southern queer people are less than you. Like, oh, I should fight them, so I'm gonna like limit, like lower their experience, or their experience doesn't matter to me. And that's not the right way to do it. I mean, it is. There's people in countries in the Middle East that are gonna have a worse experience than people in the like queer South. I don't bow to those people and like, I know we actually had it worse than you. Like, and I get it. This album and like her fan base, most of it is like queer, or mostly like women and stuff like that, who have all suffered through things or felt that shame and felt that guilt. But going so much of being like calling like Southern queer people stupid, not acknowledging them, or like, especially I saw like whole Chaperone stuff where she was like performing in Raleigh and like, no, you need to come to New York City. It's like, girl, she's from Missouri. Be like a North versus South thing, like, literally like causing like a queer civil war. But like just knowing that, the difference between a Southern queer person's experience and a person that's from like a bigger city up north, is even up north in general, is just going to unify us better. And like trying to empathize is going to unify us more than like creating this weird divide because we want to feel something. And I think it's really important for us to come together, and especially in these times. And that's just really what I've seen with the fan base. It's just a lot of like, well, you're really not that, and I'm more valid, and da-da-da-da. It's like, my experience is worse than yours. It's kind of like this like Olympics. It's like, well, I'm trans and gay man from the South, so we're kind of equal, or I've done it more. Like, it's just so stupid. But I guess my final thoughts are that Ethel Cain created this really cool fan base with a lot of different people, and a lot of people really clinged on to her aesthetic and really loved it and enjoyed it. But what it did is it caused this like divide. And I think a lot of times I've seen on Twitter where it's like, a lot of people from these like LA and New York just really go at like queer Southern people, or like, oh, if you do that's informative, I'm gonna call you out. It's like, no, people are from this, they're gonna enjoy things from the South. So I guess my biggest thought is just like, let's come together, let's all just enjoy Ethel Cain's music. And just because you're from be blessed that you're from like a Bushwick, or you're from like a WeHo or Silver Lake or something, you live in like Chicago, because queer in the South. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. I'm from a major city in the South, and Louisville's like teetering on the South, but like we're from the Bible Belt. And I mean, my boyfriend, he grew up very Baptist, and he there's times where he's like laid in bed all day because he posted something on Facebook, and a really close friend of his is like, you are evil. Look, this verse in the Bible says you're evil. And it's like, he's right, and I grew up like this, so I should believe this. It's just a whole mental gymnastics. So just uplifting but people is a better option. But yeah, what do you think of the video? Something a little bit different, but what do you think of the video? If you liked it, subscribe for more. I like talking about a little bit more deeper topics about this, so my content might skew this way, but subscribe if you liked it, like the video, push it through the algorithm, comment if I said something messed up, let me know, and see you in the next video.